Hey everyone, this is the dialogue, and as per a request from a viewer, I am now going to body analyze and speech analyze Cathy O'Brien, who is an ex-Illuminati mind control victim. So this was her in the early 90s. Just going to insert her at different periods of her life. But this is, from what I understand, one of her very first interviews.
Reputations were staked on the belief that I could not be deprogrammed to remember those things that I was supposed to forget. They were wrong. For as intelligent as these perpetrators are, they're limited in their thinking.
So did you see the wee smile that she was doing just then? She's actually a little bit gleeful about calling them perpetrators.
By their own immorality. They don't have wisdom. They don't think deep. And they never considered the strength of the human spirit. They never considered what would happen when a good man like Mark Phillips gained.
So clearly she likes Mark Phillips, who is now her husband. Some people say he's an CIA Illuminati insider, and some people say that he's just an ex-CIA person. The jury's out for me in that regard.
Knowledge of their secrets and use them to restore a mind rather than control one. I know that I'm extremely fortunate to have survived my CIA MK Ultra White House Pentagon level trauma base mind control victimization.
So she did raise her eyebrows, and that is sometimes trying to say, hey, I'm open, but she did lower her head at the same time. That could suggest deception, or it could suggest keeping herself safe. Open and safe at the same time. It kind of contradicts itself.
Now that I'm in control of my own mind and ultimately my free will, I'm telling everything that I witnessed and saw.
Her head is up, which means she's feeling very confident with herself. So her jaw is up and above.
And heard and photographically recorded behind the scenes of this New World Order effort. By telling their secrets.
She winked and smiled, which means she's quite happy. She knows what she's doing and knows what she's saying.
Their power is eroding.
And she's gleeful about that. So far everything is congruent, is mostly congruent with what she's saying. There's not a lot of deception or mannerisms which suggest deception, only the lowering of the head, but you've got to see that in context with all the other mannerisms.
I also speak out to give voice to the many mind control victims and survivors out there who can't think to speak out and tell what they know and what they've endured.
So far she's pretty open. I'm now going to go into a later date. This is Cathy a few years later, and she's discussing part of her vagina where supposedly her handlers, the MK Ultra handlers, had carved in an actual face in the labia of her vagina or inside there, and she's just discussing this graphic part. So it is graphic, people.
When I was 22 years old, my vaginal muscle, it was cut. And then once that happened,
cut, she had a slight nod of her head, which means she's congruent with what she's saying.
there was more movement with the muscle can actually protrude out the vaginal opening.
So she is in memory, and she is typically looking to the left down, which means she's accessing memory rather than constructing this memory.
And that was carved by somebody that was a very controlling person and was aware of the effects of trauma on the human mind.
So this is Brice Taylor. This looks like it's from the 90s, and she's talking about her ordeal as an MK Ultra mind-controlled slave.
Mind-control sex slaves are created by starting with a child from birth and inducing trauma, which for me was done in the form of being sexually abused and then being satanically abused.
Okay, so there is a slight shake of the head that can either indicate that it didn't happen or that she's disgusted it happened.
Then a church.
So a church, and she did shake her hand.
And then also at home, where I was put through a trial of satanic rituals, which means there were blood rituals done.
So she's nodding her head. There are mixed messages, but you'd have to see her whole body to really realize if this is truly deception or if it's just her actual mannerisms.
Where I was forced to witness animals and people being sacrificed. And then things such as in the church, I was sexually abused by the minister there.
So that's congruent.
And a lot of it was a cover for pornography and then child prostitution that looked like I was going to choir practice, but once the doors were closed to the area where we did that, we were taken down in the basement, and it turned into kiddie porn where we were being filmed.
So it looks like most of what she's saying is congruent with slight inconsistencies, but that's nothing much to say because she's still quite confident in what she's saying, and she's looking directly. She's got strong eye contact.
There are slave auctions that very elite people attend to be able to own and buy the best mind control slaves that money can buy.
So she's quite still. She is congruent with the rest of her body language.
Sinatra was Bob Hope's friend, and he actually was the person that was in charge of me a lot when I was in Las Vegas on assignment. I would be taken there to be prostituted to Elvis or to some of the other entertainers there during the shows. Dean Martin, Bing Crosby, Sammy Davis Jr., and all types of different situations. And I would be taken to different parties where they were at, where then I was prostituted, or they would make some pornography or something.
So again, she's shaking her head, but she's also nodding at the same time. So you'd have to see the rest of her body to get an accurate description about what she's actually saying. The rest of her body seems, from what I just saw before, to be pretty still. It looks like she's left-handed. So left-handed people, when they are the opposite from right-handed people in terms of accessing memory. So if she was accessing memory, she'd be looking down here rather than down here for most of us who are right-handed.
The theme of the pornography filmed by Sylvester Stallone was sex with dolphins, and he was filming a lot of these young girls with the dolphins, and
so she's accessing memory quite a bit.
That was actually pornography that was shared with a lot of people later on. They filmed us over years with all sorts of animals. I mean, it was gross.
She also has an open mouth, so I'll just go back a little bit. She also has an open mouth, which means she doesn't slam her mouth shut as soon as she said something. And that is sometimes seen as a deceptive mannerism that people do so that we can't try and figure out what they're going to say. It's like putting a hand to your mouth after you've just said something. She doesn't do that.
I mean, it was gross. There was a film that was made when Kelly was a very little girl. It was called Mommy and Me. And it was, just incestual themes of all sorts of interfamilial sex. And during the time all this was happening, I was under total mind control, and so was Kelly. We didn't even know this was going on. We were just puppeted like robots to do these things. I know that some of my perpetrators were actually known Satanists, and some of them were not. I know that Sammy Davis Jr. actually painted his little fingernail with red nail polish and was actually part of a satanic group.
And so just reminding you that I'm just purely reading the woman that I'm looking at. I'm trying not to judge what she's saying so much, but just looking that she's congruent with what she's saying, or if she's not.
Why was it that the Queen of England saw you as being the perfect candidate for genetic engineering?
In a series of meetings that took place before Reagan was president, he took me to England where we had private meetings with the Queen. During those meetings, I overheard them talking about my genetic structure and the bloodline that would house that genetic bloodline. And she was very interested in having Ronald Reagan be the father of that child. They decided that I would be impregnated for later breeding within the royal family.
So as you saw her, she was sitting still and she was making strong eye contact and spoke pretty confidently. There doesn't seem to be a lot of deception from what I'm reading at the moment.
Although I was under mind control and wasn't really aware of this for years, consciously, the full ramifications of this, I had thoughts about this baby, and I was depressed and I was sad.
So she's raising her eyebrows, which means she's corroborating what she's saying. Her eyebrows are going up. She's opening herself to what she sees as the truth. So what she's saying, whether it's the truth or whether it's not, she's believing what she's saying. She's not knowingly being deceptive to the viewer.
And I wanted him back, and I cried for months afterwards.
So even her voice and her speech is actually congruent with what she's saying.
They kept saying that
she's really connecting with her words and not just saying them.
This would further American diplomatic relations with the UK, and that I was serving my country at the highest levels by making this contribution. But the truth is, it was not my choice, and I didn't make a willing contribution of my own child. I'm hoping that my child, my son, will know who he is and will wake up.
Okay, so she is connecting again. What I mean by connecting with her words is she's holding them up, and it's like she's got the emotion coming right through the sentences into the next sentence. So she's not dropping them at the end of the sentence and just letting us drop as a result as well. A lot of deceptive people just talk at you, and I'll give you an example of one. Teal Swan, who believes that she's gone through something like this as well, but I believe she's in deception. And she's trying to hoodwink people. So I'll show you an example now.
So he'd be driving and suddenly he'd be like 20, 19, 18. He'd like pull up.
So typically abuse victims don't take on the persona of their abuser. She is actually embellishing this with her own acting.
Over the side of the road, and that was my cue that I was supposed to get out of the car and then run, basically. And I was supposed to evade him, and so it was like for a timed period of like 2 or 3 hours, I would be.
And you can see she's shaking her head lots, which means she doesn't believe in what she's saying.
Trying to run away from him. Well, he tracked me, and if
a little bit of duping delight there.
If he caught me, I would get punished. Like my rib cage is covered in these scars because he would count coup. Back then, I got really proud of myself when I would get away from him.
There's a lot of smiling going on compared to Cathy O'Brien and compared to Brice Taylor.
Instead of realizing that I was being chased through the woods by somebody who killed children.
And she just made light of something pretty horrific. So this is Fiona Barnett, who is from Australia. Now she is also a ritual abuse survivor and was part of a satanic cult as a child, as a very young child. So this is her recalling her experience.
Willing member of a coven, which was part of a greater crime syndicate, which involved drugs, guns, and sex trafficking, including child sex trafficking, human trafficking.
Okay, so she's in memory, so she's looking there, and let's assume she's a right-handed person. So she's in memory, so she doesn't seem to be constructing what she's saying at the moment.
So you were an unwitting part of that coven.
Yes, absolutely.
And
I signed up from before my birth.
Okay, so she did shake her head, but she also came back with an open eyes, which means she's being open. Now she's got her hand to her neck, which would suggest she's vulnerable at the moment.
Well, absolutely. You didn't sign up if it was before.
I did not sign up, so it was like being born into the mafia, but never actually volunteering to be a member. But the same rules apply.
Still accessing memory.
For leaving, you can check out any time you like, but you can never leave. Like Hotel California song.
So who signed you up?
My grandparent, Helen Holovchik. Helena Miloweska or Helena Holozak Holovchik, whatever you want to say. Yeah.
So she accessed memory to remember the name and who she was. And she does purse her mouth a bit because subconsciously she's still got information to say that she feels that she can't release.
Yeah, she did.
Yes.
And what about her partner, Peter? What was his
My
involvement?
step-grandfather. Oh, yeah, he was involved heavily. He was.
Even though she shook her head, he was heavily involved. So that can either mean that he wasn't involved or that she disliked the fact that he was involved.
Yeah, he did the dirty work.
What was his role in your life?
He was to abuse me. For people involved in ritual abuse and mind control, you must also sexually abuse them, so that if they do remember anything, they'll remember the sexual abuse and the pedophilia, and they'll go, oh, you know, everyone will say, oh, well, that's what was wrong. And they don't go any further, any deeper than that.
So the pedophilia is
It's
almost
a cover.
safe
It's a cover. It's a red herring
for the mind
for
control.
the real bad stuff. Not just mind control, the ritual abuse.
So her body language is congruent with what she's saying. So at the moment, you can conclude that she is telling her truth.
Satanism, satanic ritual abuse.
She had this.
So what I can say about Fiona Barnett, Cathy O'Brien and Brice Taylor, as opposed to Teal Swan, is that those three tend to connect with their words, with their emotions and their body. So everything is congruent compared to Teal Swan, whose voice, and even though she came across as confident, her voice wasn't carrying through or connecting to what she's saying, which suggests she's often in deception, which was showing in other body mannerisms. But at this stage, Fiona Barnett, just from the short little excerpt that I've got here, and the other two seem to be congruent with what they're saying. They don't seem to be making this up, and there's not a lot of deception mannerisms going on. You have to see the whole body and get to know her as a person, to know her actual mannerisms and her baseline before I get an absolute accurate understanding of what actual overall demeanor. So that's my conclusion. Thanks for watching. Please ding my bell and subscribe to the dialogue. Thanks so much.